Today we will remake this kick. I will teach you making an early hardcore kick with wavetable and saturator, creating a rumble bass and sound layering for a full sound. All of these with Ableton only. This is a step-by-step tutorial, so open your door and follow along. We will start with a fresh channel where I have already loaded a wavetable synthesizer. Here I have a MIDI clip and the MIDI notes are supposed to control the kick lengths. Even though the MIDI note ends, the sine wave is still playing. I have to adjust the volume envelope. The release parameter tells you for how long the sound is supposed to be playing once you either depress a key on the keyboard or once the MIDI note ends. We have to decrease it. If we decrease the release down to 0, we might experience some unpleasant clicks. Our kick drum has to be punchy and we want to maintain some rhythm. I will decrease the attack to 0, so we start right off with the fullest volume. And then I want to alter the rhythm by adjusting both decay and sustain. We can drag this single point to adjust these both parameters. Our kick drum has to be sharp, aggressive and full of high frequencies. For these reasons, a sine wave will not make it work. I will use the wavetable position fader now to choose something reminding of a sawtooth wave. We could use the sub-oscillator as well to fatten up the sound. The sub-oscillator by default adds a sine wave to the sound. The first parameter, gain, is going to tell you the volume of this sine wave, but what's much more interesting is the tone control. Here we can alter the waveform of the sub-oscillator. Let's alter the pitch of the sub-oscillator as well. I will increase the pitch by 1 octave. I can return now to modulations. Besides modulating the volume of the kick drum, this is something which we already did. I want to modulate the pitch of it as well. Let's head to the matrix tab and find the pitch target. I will use the second envelope to control the pitch. I want to track this tile, so I am assigning the modulation. If the value on the tile is positive, it means that we will be modulating the pitch from up to down. Now we have to set up this envelope. Again, I will decrease the attack to 0, so we start right off the bat with the highest pitch. And then I will adjust both the decay and sustain parameters. We have 3 parameters to adjust. The decay, which tells you the speed of this pitch modulation. The sustain, which can be interpreted as a lower limit of pitch range modulation. And the envelope to influence over the pitch, which is like an upper limit of pitch modulation range. I will start distorting this kick drum. For this, I will use the saturator, which is a simple wave shaper distortion effect. The curve you can see in this small window is going to transform our kick drum. Here I have a list of available wave shaper curves. These curves work best once you drive the kick drum loud enough. For this, use the drive control. The most important section of this effect is the color one. Once you turn it on, you have access to 4 different knobs which control 2 filters. The first filter is controlled only with the bass knob. It tells you how much distortion is going to be applied to the lowest frequencies. All the 3 remaining controls adjust the second filter, which is a bandpass filter, which you can use to emphasize certain frequencies. The frequency control is a center frequency knob for this filter, and the width sets the bandwidth. In other words, the amount of nearby frequencies. The depth knob can be interpreted as a gain parameter, as if we were using an equalizer. I will use these 3 controls to emphasize some rather narrow range of mid frequencies. In the end, we want to get this kick sound. This kick drum has to be equalized. Definitely, I want to cut some lowest frequencies. That is because I will layer this kick with other kick sample, and below we will also have a rumble bass playing. I don't want to mix low frequencies coming from a few sounds because it hurts your mix. I will use the high pass filter to remove the bottom and the low end from this kick. Most of the times, such kick sounds will also have an excess of mid frequencies, which can make your kick drum sound muddy. Let's fix this with a second filter with a type of a bell filter. I will crank up the Q parameter temporarily to make my filter more narrow. Let's set a rather healthy amount of attenuation, and now I will adjust the frequency control only to find a right spot for this bell filter. I will know I have found a right frequency value once I notice that all the mud from the kick drum is already gone. Now it's time to readjust both gain and Q parameters. If the kick sounds harsh, it means that we might want to cut something from the high end as well. I'm not talking about the area from 5K or 10K because that is where all the air and hiss comes from. I want to focus on the area from 1K to 2 kHz. That is the place from which all the crunch can come. And this is the final equalization curve. As you see, I have cut out even more mid frequencies to make the kick drum really clean. I could see on the volume meter that the kick drum is close to hitting the 0 decibel ceiling. So let's use the utility to make this kick drum sound quieter. In the end, I will add some extra noise by Redux Bit Crusher effect. We will use only the bits parameter, which sets a bit depth. Once I start decreasing the bit depth, I will increase that noise floor volume. This is the end of the first part of this tutorial. If you like this video so far, please hit the thumbs up button and subscribe to my channel if you don't want to miss such videos. If you would like to support my work, you can sign up to my Patreon page. If you want to learn music production on a professional level fast, you can contact me for music production lessons. Now we will create a second sound. This will be a rumble bass, which I will make with a classic reverb technique, but instead of using a reverb on the kick drum, I will use it on a bass channel. I have already loaded the Wavetable synthesizer. Here is the MIDI clip. Again, I want to set the first oscillator to the sawtooth wave. We can adjust the volume envelope. Again, I will decrease the release to 0 as well as the attack. The volume of the bass can be constant, so I will bring the sustain. After the Wavetable synthesizer, we will use the high-bit reverb effect. It's a very complex, but fortunately we will not have to adjust all these parameters. At first, let's crank up the dry wet to 100% so we hear only the reverb. The second important thing will be the EQ section. By default, the low frequencies are cut from the equalizer. Let's change it. I have picked the first filter and switched it to a low shelf one. Now I will enter the false filter and we will select a low pass filter. I will bring down the frequency control to leave the low end only. To make that rumble bass sound more solid, narrow and focused, we should put the whole reverb to mono. So we can click the mono switch under the bass label and bring the stereo control down to 0. The last important thing to choose is the convolution impulse response, which dictates the character of the whole rumble or the whole reverb. Let's check out a few of these responses. All the remaining controls we have not covered are also going to give you a minor influence over the sound. My reverb after adjustments sounds like this. And this is the kind of a rumble bass which I want now to export. Out of this exported reverb, I want to cut out and loop a short fragment. Once you cut and loop that short fragment of the rumble bass, you can start equalizing it. As you see, apart from the lowest sub-frequency which gives us that heavy low end, we have some frequencies from around 100 Hz as well, which can make your rumble bass a bit too rumble. If you want to make this sub-bass cleaner, you want to cut these frequencies. This is what I will do now. We can listen to how does the kick with rumble bass sound like together. It's time to add another kick drum sample which will give all the punch to our kick. Our sample doesn't need to have lots of high frequencies. We are most concerned about what does the mid and low frequencies sound like. Also, the kick drum shouldn't be very long. I have picked this particular sample, which I will pitch down by a single semitone. If this kick sounds too punchy for you and you want to make it sound softer, you can add some fade in. Later I'm adding the utility to make this kick quieter, and after the utility I'm using a limiter to make this kick drum sound flat. This is the gain reduction meter, which tells me by how much the kick drum is compressed. To increase the gain reduction amount, I can either use the gain control to push the kick drum towards the ceiling, or I can lower the ceiling to make it closer to the volume of the kick. We will adjust both these controls to get enough amount of limiting. As with the first kick drum sound we have created, we want to remove from this kick the lowest frequencies as well. That is because under these two kick sounds we have the rumble bass playing. We want to get rid of the lowest frequencies, but on the other hand, we will want to make this kick drum sound more round by emphasizing the frequency range from 100 Hz upwards. I will emphasize these frequencies a bit later. At first I am using again a high pass filter to get rid of the low end. To make this kick drum more round and punchy, I will use the overdrive distortion effect. It emphasizes and distorts a certain frequency range chosen by this bandpass filter. To control the filter, we have a center frequency fader and a bandwidth parameter. I will use this filter to select the lower frequencies of this kick. The drive control tells you the amount of distortion applied, and the tone parameter can add more high frequencies. In the end, the dynamics parameter can adjust a bit the dynamic range of the kick drum, so it can make the kick more flat. The tri-wet control blends this overdrive effect with our unprocessed kick sample. It's easy to add too much of this overdrive, that is why most of the times the tri-wet will be set to no more than 20%. Let's compare this kick with and without the overdrive. I paired this effect with the utility to compensate for any difference in volume. This will help me make a better judgment of what does this overdrive do. Let's listen to what does the whole kick drum sounds like with and without that kick drum sample which I added. Now I can move on to the high frequencies region, where I will create a simple synthesizer which will fill the kick drum even more. Here I have a new MIDI channel with the wavetable. We are using again a sawtooth wave. The sawtooth wave will be high passed. I will turn on the filter section where I have already adjusted a high pass filter. The frequency parameter is set rather high, so we want to have only the hiss and crunch. The last thing we want to do is to use an utility to automate, to control the volume of this sawtooth wave. I have used a gain parameter with an appropriate automation. I am grouping all these 4 channels I have created. On the whole group, I will use the overdrive. In a similar way, I have used it to add the punch and roundness to the kick drum sample. This time, I have picked an even lower frequency range. We want to emphasize the low end, which is mainly present in the rumble bass channel. All the parameters like the drive, amount of high frequencies were adjusted to my taste, but the settings are somewhat similar. With the overdrive, we added more low end, more weights to the final kick sound. Now I will use the equalizer, where I have used a filter to boost the high end as well. And this would be everything for today's video. Again, if you like this video, please hit the thumbs up button. You can share this video to your friends who also want to learn music production. If you want to write me a feedback, give it in the comments section. In next 2 weeks, I will drop another techno arrangement tutorial. So far, thanks for watching and